So thank you everyone, first of all, for coming out tonight. Thank you for the host for hosting me. I really appreciate it. My name is Lisa Gore. I'm running for the Ward 4 City Council seat. I've resided in Ward 4 for over 20 years with my husband and my son and my fur baby. Have to mention him. We live in the Hawthorne section of Ward 4. My son went to DC Public Schools here, graduated from the last class of Woodrow Wilson. He's currently in second year at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. I'm also an ANC commissioner, so I'm a two-term ANC commissioner in 3-4G, which is the only commission in the city that splits two wards, Wards 3 and Ward 4. So that's pretty unique. And I'm retired 27-year veteran of federal law enforcement, and that's what jumped me into this race. Public safety, public safety. Public safety, definitely our number one issue. And I ran in 2022, and I always said housing because part of my public safety experience, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but part of it is with the IG's Office of Housing and Urban Development, which has oversight of any federal money that has housing in it. So whether that's single family, public housing, multifamily, CDBG, anything, but public housing was a really big part of that, and some of the investigations that came out of that. So I've always felt housing was foundational. Public safety is probably the sub-foundation if housing is a top foundation. You really can't move too much if you do not have a safe space to move in. I was not satisfied, was not happy with our council members' public safety votes. I feel that they have put our safety in jeopardy. I feel that they are definitely lenient in terms of her true votes, in terms of people that are committing crimes as opposed to victim, putting a lens on victims first. And I feel my experience is a counterbalance to that. I am also very concerned with our constituent services in the ward. As a ANC commissioner, I can tell you that I have reached out to her office for help, probably just as many times as you all have, and have gotten silent treatment as an ANC commissioner. I've called for seniors where I know they needed help, and I mean emergency help. One senior was living in her car in the winter. Called the constituent services line several times, no answer. Didn't go to anybody. Ended up putting her in a hotel myself. So we as a ward come from a legacy of tremendous constituent services. That's the legacy of Ward 4. Always has been. And I know there's issues with council members. People are going to say, oh, well, this one was good. This one, maybe not so good. But previously, we had really strong constituent services. The other thing that we had always been known for in Ward 4 is how we treated our seniors. Most of the senior legislation came from this ward. So we also have a really big issue with our seniors being left behind. And that's very concerning. Ward 4 is one of the wards that has one of the highest senior populations in the city. And our seniors are very disconnected from services. So that is something that also concerns me. And before I jumped into the race, I asked my folks that I know, that I'm really close with in my immediate area, how do you feel? Tell me about your perspective. And it was not favorable. I didn't have anyone say, Lisa, don't jump into the race. Nobody. And then I started expanding out into the ward, talked to folks in North Portals, Riggs LaSalle, Brightwood, all over the ward. And people were saying the same thing. Definitely public safety. They wanted change, and they wanted somebody that was going to show empathy. So it's not necessarily that the council members' votes on public safety or her perspective or ideology on public safety was the only critical issue that people were concerned with. A lot of people, and I've heard some of you guys say the same thing, when you contact her or her office to help on public safety, there is no response to that. There is no empathy there. And that's very concerning. So those are some of the reasons why I jumped in. I'm also big advocate for education. My son, as I said, went through DC Public Schools. He was a premature little guy. He's now, so he was 24 weeks. 1 pound 5. So moms know how small that is. He was tiny. He stayed in the hospital for 6 months, but now if you saw him, my God, he's like 240 and 6'4". I mean, he's huge. He's huge. But based on that experience, I come from a perspective, first of all, for being a mom, with the kid in DC public schools, but also working through services and making sure that services get to kids early, or dealing with him early, and I saw the benefit of it. So I think that is like somewhere we need to start going in DC. A lot of the services that come to our kids are once they're found adjudicated, so they're already in the system, which is late, to start helping them out with things. And then in addition to that, economic development, something that we don't talk about a lot, but coming out of the pandemic, definitely supporting small businesses and economic recovery in DC, and especially here in Ward 4. We have some really good main streets, Georgia Avenue, 14th Street, Upshur. We have really good corridors, but we have to, Kennedy Street, we have to make investments. And we need a council member that doesn't see development and economic development as the boogeyman. So those are like definitely some of the core things that I am really committed to doing and bringing into Ward 4. And in addition to that, really working hard for the board. So some folks, like Corinthian knows, I work on the ANC. I'm one of the commissioners that when you call, I answer the phone. If you ask me to go out and visit, I go out and visit. I check on people. It's just old school boots on the ground. I don't know how else to describe it. It's almost, it reminds me of my work in law enforcement, where I came from a generation that, maybe kind of similar to something like a beat cop, where you're walking the streets, you're talking, you're meeting the people. You're not behind a computer trying to solve a case. You're actually out front doing it. And that's how I view constituent services, that you're out front working with your neighbors in your community, trying to solve those issues. And that's what I've done as an ANC commissioner as well. So with that, I want to hear from you guys. That's a little bit of background about me, but I definitely want to hear like some of the questions that you guys have top of mind and answer those for you.
So I've been here, my husband and I have been here since 2007, and when we first moved here, we lived in a row. It was kind of scary to walk up to the subway along 14th Street, and that seemed to have gotten better over time. But my feeling is more recently, it's really reverted to what it used to be, and I think it's going in the wrong direction. What do you see as ways to correct 14th Street, or the crime, or the drugs, or the prostitution, so it's safe again?
So I think a big component of that is numbers within MPD. We are down several hundred officers. And you might know MPD is divided by PSAs. My PSA 201 is down over 25% just to get to baseline. And to kind of put that in perspective, that means that, and I was told this by a lieutenant, on an average day they have 1 or 2 officers per shift to cover a PSA that runs roughly from Georgetown to Chevy Chase, Maryland, DC side. And he said that's on a good day. That's not including if someone calls in or sick and they can't make it. NPD is down. When I tell you they are down officers.
Why?
Their budget was cut, for one. So in 2021, we cut $15 million. And that hurt recruiting. So they weren't able to recruit. And coming through that as well, we had legislation that passed through council that made recruiting very difficult. Some of the things that were done in terms of police chase, no police chase. In terms of union, we curtailed their union rights because of incidences. So there were definitely issues in terms of legislation that made the recruiting process difficult. And I can tell you, coming from law enforcement, we compete with every jurisdiction around us. We're sitting in the middle. And we're competing with Virginia, we're competing with Maryland, we're competing with the feds. So most agencies, like I was a federal special agent, if someone wanted to go into that line, 1811 it's called, they wanted to go that, within a few years they're making over $100-some thousand. They're making top dollar, just coming out of school. So you're not only competing with, positions and who has the best policies to do your job, but you're also competing with the feds in terms of money, who pay a lot more. So we made it, or I won't say we, legislators made it less attractive to recruit officers to the city. And we're still trying to recover from that.
Property taxes have gone up. How could they have cut their budgets?
I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of how or what, but the fact remains their budget was cut. So I think that's a good question for the council member.
I said, if our property taxes have gone up, why did they cut the money they spend on the police force?
Yeah, good question for your council member currently. I suspect from what I read was one of the issues was they felt that they didn't need the movement. I mean, let's be honest, the movement was defund police. If you go back to her statements, her public statements, you go back to her website, when she was running, some of the media that was out there, she was a defund police candidate. And our council was a defund the police council. The majority of them felt that was the right direction to go. So not only did they defund police, but if you look at the legislation and some of the things that were decriminalized post the budget cut, the mood of the council was to take policing out of public safety, de facto. There's no issue about that. That's exactly what they were trying to do. And that's what they did.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, my husband was on his way to pick me up from the YMCA after my great workout, but he got carjacked on the way. So, and don't tell Noel that I've said this because he's
We all
really.
knew anyway.
Everybody knows Don't tell my husband.
Secrets on Arkansas Avenue.
But
That's hilarious.
he grew up in Venezuela, and it was a pretty tough place at that time. But to the police officer's credit, we got the car back that night,
Oh,
and it wasn't destroyed or anything. But still, he was like, and he
Right.
he grew up in Venezuela, which is not a
Right.
great spot. But
Right.
anyhow, it's so public, so safety. Like carjacking, come on,
Really?
yikes.
It's one a day in the district is what I read.
Yeah,
It's a terribly dangerous crime.
Yeah.
absolutely.
It goes
Absolutely.
unpunished, yeah.
And my
Absolutely.
husband's biggest concern was, thank God I didn't have the dog in the car because they may have taken Lulu.
Well, that's, we laugh, but that's what started to happen.
Yeah,
Is they
exactly.
are and have been,
Stealing pets,
I don't know
pets.
what the term is, jacking dogs or whatever,
Pet
but they
napping.
have been stealing pets and they sell them for, a good sum of money. It's very scary. It's very scary because some people might not fight for their car, but I know
They'll
people
fight
that
for
have
their
said they will
dog.
fight for their
Oh, yeah.
dog. Yeah,
My dog
it's
is
very
shit.
scary.
Our dog would go
Yeah.
On that front, because you mentioned a couple of things, schools, and I've lived in the district for almost 40 years, and I've seen, the district put a lot of money into schools,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make any difference if they're not getting kids to go to school.
Amen.
And especially if they're, and I just heard somebody, 12-year-olds out carjacking. So what are your approaches to that?
The root cause of the carjacking.
Well, making sure kids are going to school, holding parents accountable for that.
So, great question. That's a truancy issue. And Ward 4 high schools, if you guys haven't kept up with the truancy rates, our truancy rates are around 68-73% chronic truancy
Oh, wow.
in our Ward 4 high schools. I've never heard of any rate that high. I mean, that's insane. And having a son, that just, pretty much graduated from high school, I can't imagine him being like chronically absent, truant 60-70% of the time. So when you think about that, you think about the learning loss, and even trying to get them back into school, the challenges you're going to have with that. And then you also think about what you just said, they're somewhere. They're not in school, where are they? They're out on the streets. And I've had people say that live, we were talking about 14 Buchanan, a gentleman that lives over in that area, you know, he was saying he could see kids coming out of one door, the front door of the building, and then going around to the back of the building, just not going into school. So we do have a major truancy problem across DC. One of the things, well, first of all, it's taken a while to start for the council to start addressing it, but the mayor did just offer legislation to address truancy. I think that's on the right track. There's some mandatory parental training that's in there. So when I started my career here in DC, I started out as a juvenile probation officer, did a lot of parental groups, training. I was a certified addiction counselor, so counseling. The issue was they weren't mandatory. So she, in her legislation, is offering mandatory training and counseling for parents at a certain point in the truancy process. I think there needs to be a lot more transparency on truancy rates. Right now, OSSI is producing those rates at the end of the year. When you have a truancy rate that high, if that was your kid, I want to pretty much know every day. At least every week. So I think, you know, we need to change the rate that the notifications are being analyzed up by either OSSI or another body, or reported publicly, because it's not just a parent problem, it's a community problem. So I think the community needs to know on a more regular basis what those truancy rates are looking like, whether they're coming up or whether they're coming down. I would love to see a truancy review board within the school system to make sure that they're handling it right. It's another oversight type of body, but I do think it's warranted given where we are, and particularly with the juvenile crime and the high levels of truancy rates. We don't have something like that now. We don't, I don't believe, do effective oversight at the council level. So if you guys might remember, the education committee was rolled into committee of the whole. So there is no separate committee that oversees education. It's rolled into committee of the whole. Committee of the whole has a lot of committees under it. And so I come from the federal oversight community. You cannot do effective oversight when you're overseeing that many committees. You just can't do it. So you ask yourself, when have we had, you know, just like really good, dedicated, you know, hearings on education issues, and I mean regular. When we get to, I mean, you don't go from a truancy rate of 20 to 70% overnight. What in the world? I mean, it's unreal. So the only, you know, oversight body that the council has is that committee of the whole, and it's just not effective. We're not getting the oversight that we need so that they could put pressure on the executive level to make the changes that we see. But additionally, I just think, you know, kids, when they're truant like that, getting them back into the school, first thing, what supports do they need? I'm definitely a proponent of that, seeing what supports they need as well as what the family needs. We do have a lot of programs for kids, but again, it goes back to what I was saying too in the beginning of, when do they get those services? And I really believe we are on the wrong track in terms of getting them those services when we identify like an issue like that. The issue is already there. It's already there. That's why they're truant. It's already there. So we have to do a much better job of pushing some of that money to the front end of the child and the family to make sure they're supported before they get to that position. Because it's hard to correct. And when you talk about a kid in high school that's 70% chronic truant, how do you catch that up? That's tough. And that's why you see the high impact tutoring that DC is offering now. We can do better on that. That's for a certain period of time, and then they kind of move out of that. That's the other thing that I'm concerned about. You know, I know from my son and from, you know, working with kids through the beginning of the first part of my career, you need to stay with them. Have like this beginning end point. It's a continuum. And, you know, that comes with budget, that comes with money, that comes with, you know, redesigning systems. But I truly feel, based on my experience, that's the way to go. 6-7 weeks of a program and then you're out of the program is not going to be effective.
Yeah, I also think they need alternative ways to do school, because after the pandemic, they got used to online, and I'm a pediatrician, and I have some percentage of high school kids that they develop a severe anxiety, and they haven't even been able to go back yet, or they don't feel safe in school is another reason they don't go.
Those are good points, and you're exactly right. Definitely, I've heard the kids mention the safety, and I've seen in my son, because I did not realize when my son went to college his first year, he had not been in the classroom since 10th grade.
Right.
I did, and I felt horrible. Right? That's what I said too. I was like, oh my God. When he told me that, and so his school, his university, they did a tremendous job.
Right.
They reconfigured the dorms. They put the tutoring session in the dorm. They put counseling in the dorm. And they basically said when we went to orientation, and they said this to like all the parents, it just didn't click with me. That, you know, they did the redesign, they let us tour it, and they explained why. Because these kids were coming out of COVID. And I realized that, but I did not realize he hadn't been in the classroom since 10th grade. So it's a big impact for them. And you're right, some kids have different learning styles, and, you know, being out that long and then going back, you know, does produce anxiety for them. And I think that's something we've kind of dropped the ball on, definitely.
So I think, you know, going to education, one of the things that we were really happy about was that they passed, OSA passed the early childhood education program, where they were paying teachers more so you get more quality teachers and all that stuff, and support the teachers so they might actually be able to live in the community that they teach.
Yeah.
And now they've defunded
They cut it. Yeah.
essentially completely, which by the way raised our daycare costs $400 a month.
Holy cow.
Next year, because all of these daycares that had given the teachers raises to kind of bring them up to standard can't remove the raise because they'll lose the teachers.
Oh my goodness.
And so now they're having to front the cost, which then means the parents have to front the cost. You know, I mean, lucky for us, right? We have one more year of daycare, so we're like, you know, we're gonna bite the bullet and go, but you know, there's a lot of parents that can't afford in DC, in our ward, to send their kids to quality early childhood education. And I'm just curious, you know, as a council member, how would you approach these programs that are great programs, but then become defunded, you know, and then I recognize that it's sort of a different pot of money, but infuriating that then the council is wanting to, you know, pass the assistance for Capital One Arena to basically give a billionaire money
More money.
to
Those are
fix.
two different.
They
They're
are
two
two
different
different
pots of
pots.
money.
They
I
are.
did the qualifier. I did the qualifier.
One is capital, one is operating.
But I feel as though
It's the optics.
I agree.
ultimately it's like
And
where
priority.
are our priorities?
Right. I agree. And I think our priorities are dual. I mean, I think we have to have great programs, and I do think we have to have great investments that fund our programs. In terms of this budget, which is what is caught up with the early childhood, and I had a neighbor that worked in that program, so I'm really familiar with it. I just don't think there are any good cuts. I personally, and one of the things I'm doing as chair, I'm getting ready to submit testimony for DC Public School budget, and my testimony is basically written saying no cuts to education. So I know that we have quite a few cuts there, but my perspective, and I think a lot of people right now are just saying no cuts. Now, in terms of being on the council, it's the advocacy, and I think one of the, and you know, the executive is going to make her decision. Council has the option to come back and redo that. But I think as a council member, you just have to advocate for those particular budget priorities you want. And I think the relationships with the other council member, staff, and the executive are really crucial in doing that. You have to have some type of relationship. I was at Petworth Library the other day, and what was really interesting was to hear the mayor make a comment about the relationship with the current council member, which is also no secret. They don't like each other. They get, they butt heads, I would say. But one of the things the mayor said is my door is always open. The council member can come talk to me at any time. And you have to be in a position as a council member, especially when you got the executive sitting in your ward, to be able to come and have those conversations and say, this is what's critical for me and what's critical for my ward. Gotta be able to do that. And I think we have lost the ball on that. So I just say that to say part of advocacy is relationships. And the tightest relationship should be the one with the sitting council member that sits with the executive that sits in the ward. I mean, I just believe that's strong.
How do you get along with the mayor?
So my contact with the mayor has been through ANC. And I can tell you one of the things that I approached the mayor on, probably the only issue two issues I've approached the mayor on. And one of them is recent. First issue, affordable housing in Chevy Chase Civic Corps. Because as you know, Rock Creek West, 3% of affordable housing units. And we had an opportunity to build affordable housing on the library and a community center in an area of DC that has absolutely no affordable housing. So I wanted the mayor's commitment to keep that going and to keep that promise. So I did approach her on that. And I said, I will support you in your effort to get affordable housing on the Corps. And I want you to keep your commitment and fund that project. And it was funded. It was funded this year. So if you go look at that budget, and one of the things we said is we need enough money in the budget to do it and to do it right so that we can have enough money to put a good amount of affordable housing there. The other issue that I recently reached out to her on was Lafayette Elementary School is going through renovation. There's money for the field renovation, but they're doing artificial turf. And my community is really opposed to artificial turf because of PFAS, chemicals in it. So I wanted to reach out to her and see if there was any room for negotiation for a grass field as opposed to a PFAS artificial turf field.
Injuries
So.
are higher.
Injuries are far higher.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
problem with artificial turf,
Mhm.
it's based on the same asphalt you have on the roads. And then they put artificial grass on top of it.
Yeah.
So that's why you have so many knee injuries, ACL injuries, and
Yeah.
like, can't do that to kids.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that, I said we gotta see if there's any room for negotiation for that. So I'm gonna come back to you. I don't have like an adversarial, and so my background, 27 years federal law enforcement. I left as a senior manager. I supervise on the executive level. I know you're gonna have disagreements and, areas where you're not gonna see eye to eye, but you have to maintain that professionalism. And I think that goes a lot further than poking the bear.
Thank you so much for being here and talking with us. I really appreciate it. I tons of questions I'd love to ask, but I guess the thing I'd like to ask is you focus a lot on like no cuts to education and no cuts to the MPD budget. I also don't want my taxes to go up. I was curious, what would you not fund to fund these other things?
Well, that's a good question too. So my approach to budgeting is kind of how I did it in my agency. So I was responsible as a manager for budgets in excess of $1 million. When I was looking at what I needed to cut, so in federal law enforcement, my agency and most federal law enforcement agencies went through huge budget cuts 9/11 in post. So we lost a tremendous amount of money when everything basically turned to terrorism. I never worked I've worked on terrorism task forces, but I've never worked in an agency where that was the #1 priority. So what they were doing is they were taking a lot of that money and putting it towards the Bureau to focus on terrorism. But I look at what is wasteful, so I come from an IG background, and it's always fraud, waste, and abuse. And when you're looking at programs, you're looking at what can you eliminate, what's not working, what's inefficient, what's duplicative. So to me, nothing is necessarily off the table because you want programs that run efficiently and are meeting the mission. So when I would look to cut a program or cut budget or reduce spending in that way, I'm looking at what is the least efficient. And I'll give you an example. One that sticks to the top of my head deals with businesses. It's a business program where they basically, the businesses have to fill out a form and information in terms of like if they have, can't think of like the 100% the word, but basically their equipment, if they have certain equipment. Once the businesses fill that out for the year, they estimated out of all of DC like about 400 or 500 businesses that actually have equipment that meet this definition. So you have hundreds, if not thousands of businesses filling out the information, which they all say is really onerous, and there's only about 200-300 so many businesses that are actually meeting the criteria. So can that program be rolled into another program? If only 200 businesses meet the criteria, how much money are we talking about if they're not being accurate? How much fraud is in that? So those are the kind of things how I would balance. So there's no real, except for, I say education, right now, education is critical. That would probably be the only thing that I would not touch. And like the program she mentioned, great program. There's another program that I love called Healthy Futures, which kind of does exactly what I think we should be doing, which is pairing mental health providers with daycare providers early. I would love to see that expanded. I mean, can you imagine they're identifying kids like birth to 3, pairing them with providers, but it ends.
Yeah, and it's not funded.
Exactly, it's not funded.
Funded in Maryland.
Exactly. What if we funded that until they were through 12th grade and followed them? So those are some of the things that I would be really, really hesitant to cut. I just think with our education budget, we need pretty much everything that we have there. So I would say education, but other than that, there's ways that I think you could look at it. And I look at things from an efficiency standpoint because I come from an IG office, and that's what we do.
I have a suggestion. We can put a camera in Arkansas. Doesn't that increase your budget by 8%? Speed camera.
Except for the people that don't like the speed cameras.
Red light cameras, speed cameras
Yeah.
would make $1 million, except they're all from Maryland.
In fact, at that intersection, I have a bird's eye view of Parkway and Arkansas.
Oh, for sure.
And how I call it, the fender ballet that goes there.
Yeah.
AM everything is inbound. PM everything is outbound.
Oh, yeah.
I have 5 way intersections like that, like I said, that I re-engineered in New York City. That weren't as crazy as this, but again, you're right, you're dealing with people from Maryland and Virginia. Sorry. In the trade, at the ITE, we have certain names for certain states and their drivers. I'm not going into it.
No.
There are women present. But in the meantime, the things that are going on down here are obscene. And I mean, a few weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, somebody was drunk and went through a row of cars here.
Yeah, right.
But that's
We
like
got
the
no
fourth time
response
it's
from
happened in
these
2
stores,
years.
except maybe you got one person response.
No, our whole cars got destroyed, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No car got
Yeah,
See,
it's,
and I mean, this is routine.
It is.
I have stuff up here that if you had cameras off the Parkway and looking at each way or this, And the other thing, well, the other part of it is how you collect the money, because apparently we give it away.
Reciprocity
Give it away.
is important.
It
That
is.
reciprocity.
It is.
The state, I mean, district right now, the last I saw, they're in excess of $18 million in arrears on traffic violations.
Yep, that's right.
Reciprocity is huge, because you have these Maryland drivers that are speeding down the street, they're going past the Trinity Church on 16th Street, blowing through that.
They drive
red
with
light.
impunity, lawlessness.
Right.
They run red lights here constantly.
Oh,
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, and one of the things that the district should do, that they can do as the district, abolish right on red. Abolish it. You don't, that was something that was done
Didn't they cut
during
that out?
Won't make a
the oil
difference.
crisis.
Nobody knows.
And everybody's trying to save gas. Cut it. Cut it.
I thought they did already.
So,
Get NPS to put us on.
Right on red.
to the point though, we've contacted the council, I think, several times actually over the last couple of years.
How many responses?
Because, huh?
How many responses?
I know, exactly,
Zero.
but it's really terrible. And, you know, this row has a lot of young kids.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, unluckily or luckily, I guess, depending on how, you know, most of us don't use the front of our house. Most of us go out through the back and we're in the alley, but people cut
Okay.
through the alley
Yeah, I mean,
all the time and
Yeah.
speed down the alley.
Yeah.
And it's just a
That's
matter
great.
of time before a kid is gonna get killed.
Right.
It's like 30 miles an hour or
And,
something.
I had an
yeah,
incident,
it's
I had an
crazy.
incident, I'm getting work done in our house. Yeah. Contractor comes, he's unloading the truck. The guy claims he's late for school, he should have been through that if he was on time. 20 to 30 minutes ahead of time. Okay? He comes in, because the truck's there, he's hitting the horn. Boom, the guy's moving the stuff out as quick as they possibly can. I'm watching it and saying, okay, where's this going? Genius decides he's going to play like it's on cops, and he gets out of the car. See? Like I said, I've done this stuff for 10 years in New York City, and I have had to go up against knuckleheads on the street that think that they're macho. And I don't care. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Dude.
But I will dance on somebody's head with a three-quarter
Right.
And for president.
No.
Well, it's
You got one
interesting
sick New Yorker running.
because she is on the transportation committee. Did
It's
you know that?
No, I mean, we can't get lights, we can't
Can't get
get
lights. And this goes back away. This goes
speed
back.
bumps, nothing to compete with it.
Have you all done a walkthrough with
Yes.
her?
They never
and-
showed up.
God, like.
They never show
Yeah.
up.
Brandon just stopped talking.
He did, and he
Brandon
got
Todd
the
wanted to
divider.
at
The one-
14th
yeah, because
Street
it was
in
the-
Arkansas.
Yeah.
And when it went through.
But I
it
mean
was-
recently.
it was- No.
No.
There's
No,
a post
not
reverse.
Really?
None recent. I mean, it's to
doesn't
the
happen.
point where nobody feels safe parking in the front of their houses because it's just a matter of time before a
Yeah,
drunk
the
driver's
cars
gonna
get
take their
smashed all the
car.
time.
It feels like we can't hang out in the front of our houses because the cars are going double the speed limit
And
in
it's
front of
noisy,
the house.
noisy.
The
That's
noise is the easy
unreasonable
part.
noise.
Like I said, if you get rid of the right turn on reds, that privilege of coming through there and zooming through there is
Right.
gone. And that's important, not just here, but across the whole
Right.
country.
I also don't know what happened with park police. They used to stop commercial vehicles going
That's
down the
another,
road.
that's
But
another
what
one.
is like people like you can have a
I-
semi truck drive down
Yes.
the parkway, nobody cares.
No.
I have a
So
question.
it's like,
The Parkway, Rock Creek and everything else, is that under NPS or is that under the district?
No, it's Park Service.
Park Service.
Okay,
That's
there's
Park
the
Police.
problem.
yeah.
Then-
I don't know
because
why
see-
they
Well,
would
but Park Police, let me slow you down. Park Police, so here is the problem. It's no coordination.
Yeah.
And that's something that I talked about early with someone. NPD and Park Police should be working together on this in terms of enforcement. What upsets me more, and I told you I'm a 2-term commissioner, it really upsets me when I hear communities have issues like that, and I know what goes on in other parts of the ward. I know what she's doing in other parts of the ward, and there have been plenty of walkthroughs with the DDOT director and her in certain areas.
Yeah, the neighborhood that makes the
So-
most noise gets resolved.
Well, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be the truth because whoever is a council member, and when I become council member, everybody's a member. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not Right, because I know what goes on. I know because I'm a chairperson as well. So there's privilege that I have as a chair, in terms of emails or seeing things or being invited to things. And that is just absolutely ridiculous. The first thing that you need to have, they need to get their butts out here and get on a walkthrough and get this corrected. And she can do that. But she won't. That's why I'm running. So I will do it. I mean, this is crazy. But that really makes me really upset because I know what's going on
I
across
have
the
just
board.
one question. So what is gonna take, in your opinion, to build up the police force where it used to be for them to start enforcing these just basic traffic rules?
And that's right. That's part of those low numbers is they can't devote the time to some of the traffic enforcement, some of the things that they're trying to do. I know now they're trying to they're putting vehicles in front of CVS's to curtail retail theft. But I think in terms of your answer, I think the new Secure DC legislation was in the right direction. It did reverse some of the things that happened with the revised criminal code that made it a little bit more onerous. So the chase policy has gone back to common sense. The neck adverse restraint, that's gone back to common sense. And one of the things I did, I was a National Use of Force coordinator, so I trained on these things. And when I saw that, our policy was any inadvertent touch. And when you're out there policing, you just think about it, if you're in a fight for your life, and then you think, oh my God, if I can't touch this part of the body, that policy was for, chokeholds, not inadvertent touching. So going back, and that is a step in the right direction. So I think we're moving in the right direction with those policies, but it is going to take, we're probably 5 to 7 years out.
Really?
Absolutely.
How are we going
Absolutely.
to, see, that worries me because
It should.
Overhearing certain officers, out for, they claim their numbers, district-wise, they're 800 plus short.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
So it's like, well, do you have it, the way to bring up the pay salary to make it more competitive? And that's when it goes back to me. God, we gotta get this reciprocity thing because $18 million. Okay, $18 million may only get you for the first year in. That may get you about 2,700 officers, plus or minus. I'm thinking for the first couple, 3 years. But once you get them in, you work with them with what's going on.
Yeah.
You can't get them.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing there. And essentially the district is throwing the money away to these people who come out here and they think they're driving Mad Max.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that they're working on, so I do think Chief Smith is on the right track with some of her policies and trying to straighten out issues internal to the force. But it is going to take time to build that back out. I would love to see, and I'm a big affordable housing advocate, but I would love to see where our police officers can live in the city, because I think we'll retain them more, and I think we'll have less use of force incidents, because when you have people that live here, you get to know them. Like, I know the folks in my area that have a tendency to cause issues. I know who they are. And most of you guys do too. I mean, so you know.
Avenue, who the bad people
right. So, exactly. So, if you guys were policing, you're going to approach them differently because you know them versus the person that you don't know. And you don't know what they're going to do to you. So, your guard is completely different. I would love to see, and I was a female agent, one of the things that I did, I had to move because the federal government transferred me. My husband was like, no way, we're selling this house in DC. Good luck. So I had to pack up or else get fired with my son. We moved to Tennessee and, we cross-commuted. But while I was down there, one of the biggest challenges for me was, I had a young son that I had to take care of. So I had to get daycare. There's a big issue with women in law enforcement. I had several girlfriends. One of them came after your niece at UVA. We were both in UVA together. We both started out in U.S. Customs. she had to drop out after about 3 years because of, child care issues. So I would love to see, MPD has an initiative called 30 by 30, which is increasing the number of women in the police force by 2030 by 30%. I would love to see a subsidy for child care for female officers. They make a really good addition to the force, and female officers have a tendency to use less force. So that would be something I would love to see and love to do and champion for the department.
Do you think the PBA would go along with it?
Huh?
Do you think the PBA would go along with it?
PBA?
I'm sorry, police benevolent, whatever the.
Oh, the police union?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you mentioned police presence outside of like CVS and things like that.
Yeah.
Retail theft has gotten out of control. I popped into the CVS recently. I just bought a toothpaste.
Yeah.
And the toothpaste was locked down.
Oh, it's awful. I know.
I know, but I mean, I didn't have time to search down because they
That's
lowered their staffing there too. It was at 14th and Key next to Whole Foods. It wasn't in our ward, but 17th and Key, their staffing is much more robust. But I couldn't find anybody, and I didn't have that much time to search someone down to open the toothpaste.
That's right.
So I slept. And that's very frustrating because CVS should be a place where you can pop in, grab what you want,
And
head
go.
on out.
Right. Right.
Well, and then what happens is you just order it from Amazon.
That's
and then
right.
You get into a routine of ordering from Amazon.
And then someone steals it off your
That's
porch.
right.
I ordered from
Yep.
CVS.com, but
Yeah.
my coupons. But it was so frustrating.
Right.
It was like, and you have Georgia Avenue, CVS,
Yep.
Irving and Georgia closed.
Yep.
It's just ridiculous that.
And all their stuff is on sale right outside.
Oh, well, that's the key. That's the key.
14th Street is a complete mess through DC, USA. You have all those motorbikes who are just sitting there, I guess they're trying to deliver.
Yeah.
But it's very frustrating because they back out into traffic. You have, I'm all for small business people and people trying to, but it's a little crazy down there.
It is. So I definitely think we gotta.
Piggybacking on that, I'm sorry, I'm not for mass incarceration, but the new, anything under $1,000 is it's no big deal, it seems like to me.
$1,000
And I
is
feel
a lot of
like
money.
that's a lot, and I just feel like it's not sending the message that it has a message, yes, that it's wrong to steal, and I understand people don't have things. That's another problem that should be dealt with, but it shouldn't be okay to steal things, because I also pay for my toilet paper and my toothpaste. And again, with the Amazon thing, I love being in the city, but if everything is it's not worth it, I should just order it on Amazon, what's the point of being in the city,
And when all these things close, and we've talked about this before, everybody in this room can pick up and move if we really, really had to. But what happens to everybody in the city that can't move? And we want sort of this diverse community and the sense of community, and that's why we're here. But it's becomes where it's just so frustrating
It's
to
more
be
just
here.
the messaging that there's just no
Right.
rules right now, and depending on,
Really tough
I'm
to
not
say.
conservative, we need to send
Right.
a message that there are rules in the city, and
That
that's
it's
okay,
enforced.
and we will live up to them, that spreads out.
I agree. One of the things that, I don't know if you guys are aware, on the secure DC legislation, one of Janice's amendments was to raise the to keep the retail theft level at the $1,000 level. Brooke Pinto was trying to bring it down to $500, which I agreed with. Well, but what they were trying to do with that was actually go after organized retail theft rings, which is, and I can tell you as being an agent trying to prosecute cases, your prosecutors are always looking for the loss amount. They're always looking at the amount that was stolen. When you bring it up, when you bring it higher, it takes your MPD, you're making it more difficult for MPD to make those cases, because instead of making a case at $500, now I got to make the case at $1,000. And so that's doubling. So that is another disastrous policy that, you know, is hurting businesses like you, you know, and people like the CVS, because, you know that now they can go in and I can still, you know, $999.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. And I agree with you, but this is kind of what I was saying in the beginning about all these policies and all the decisions and the votes that just made this entire ecosystem, you know, and that's not including what we have on the prosecution side with the, you know, criminal justice part side of it, but it's made it much, much more difficult. And people have just simply taken advantage of that. They have taken advantage, and that is where we are in DC. And it's definitely time for us to get back, you know, to some common sense legislation.
So I know we're kind of reaching the 7 o'clock time, but
That's
everyone
quick.
wants to hear from you. But first of all, everybody here needs to give, the max you can give in DC is $50. Really need you to give that. It's matched what, 5 to 1. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
so let's everybody support here so that we can show that she's got the people, she's got the votes. And then I think if there's any more questions,
I just
I
have
know
one
people kind of-
statement per se, not a question, but okay, part of the money and our votes, once you're elected, which I think you will be, how we as a community can help you to be successful at your job.
Oh, I love that question.
Yay for God.
So I so love that question because I said public safety was my number one, and probably number two. If you guys go on my website, I have a letter to Ward 4, and one of the things I say in that letter was how literally upset that I was, and I think I worded it as professionally as possible, that our legislation in this ward is not necessarily born from our people and our experiences. It is not. I just went back through Janice's voting record today. I go through her voting record almost every day, and I get more upset every time I look at it. It's just like, my God. So we're in the top of the crime crisis. And what does she introduce? So remember, council members introduce, and then they are also co-sponsors. She introduces legislation on parks, which is cool, right? If we're not in the middle of a crime crisis, if we're not in the middle of outrageous truancy rates, if we're not in the middle of our seniors sleeping in cars and not having the needs and services that they need, we have so many issues in Ward 4. And just like what you guys talked about, traffic safety, you know, so how you can help me is communicating. I am going to be out there. I'm going to be an active council member. I'm going to have community meetings. Please come, please share your ideas, because that's where our legislation is supposed to come from. Your issues, not, you know, some national level organization that's spending money in the city. It's supposed to come from you all. And that's what we have to do to get this ward back on track. So participating, go to your ANCs and bubbling up those issues and things that you need your council member to do. That's the best thing you could do to help us.
You don't have to wait until the election day. So right now we're in the midst of our communication campaign. So we're going to be hitting every single voter in the district. But, you know, obviously the donations would be great to help in doing so. But the other part about what you can do today is we're compiling all of those issues in brief testimonies. What we want to do is lift up those testimonies through our communications to talk about these are the issues that we are hearing every single day and that we're going to be working on. That's going to go to all the mailboxes, but it's also going to be a message to leaders in the community and other electeds on how the community is talking about what needs to be done. The campaign affords us an opportunity to be able to lift those things up in a unique way for a short period of time. And we're at the brink of doing that, hopefully in a very robust way. But how you can help is by articulating what are those testimonials that you have mentioned today. Please put them in brief sentences, and we're going to use them and attribute them to make sure that, one, you're being listened to, but it's being lifted up, and using the capacity that we have as a campaign to be able to lift up community members' voices. The other one is tell your friends. If you want to host a meet and greet, please do so. There's two months left. Evelyn will hook you up. But also, if you want to communicate to your friends, other community members, other people throughout the district that you think are influential, we can also help use our communication tools to do that in an efficient way in mass, at least to your folks directly, if you are so gracious.
Honestly, if it's to gauge the neighborhood listservs and what's going on.
Wonderful.
I think you're a clear leader, by all means. You know, I'll tell you as a parent of 2 young kids, love DC, have been here for 20 years, but we already started talking about potentially moving out because we just don't want our kids to grow up in environments like this. Every time we were parking in front of our houses, and kid you not, every morning, putting our kids in the car, you know, it's like the car speeding next to you. It's really nerve-wracking every morning doing that. Luckily, you know, I now be parking in the back alley, which a lot of people let us. But it's bad.
I hope not.
It's bad.
I hope that all of you, what I saw today, and so I'm all across the district and all over, seeing meetings like these. This is powerful. Your reach in your community is something to behold. I think that people are sleeping on it. You don't have to sleep on it too. It's not like, oh, you know, we're not crying because of the influence we could have yielded before, but rather there's an opportunity to be able to yield influence in a strong way. You know that you're going to be listened to, and you know that you have a leader who's going to be available and accessible. But we need your help to win. So those are the unique ways you can help. And again, it's amazing what you guys have done in terms of
I know it's very difficult to be a soundboard for every single neighborhood and for every single street that has issues, and I recognize that it's like our pains might not pale in comparison to some other neighborhoods and some other pains, and I keep that in mind, but I know you can do only so much even when you're elected, so like pushing those buttons, as you said, with DDOT and mayor's office, with this, like to kind of help do something about it, so we can feel safe.
And also, and she's listening to us, because and correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen Janice on this block.
No, never. I emailed her a few times.
When she was Ward 4. So thank you for visiting our block. Times, Lisa.
Another way you can help. April 16th is when Janice will be debating with Lisa. April 16th, Emancipation Day at the Emory Fellowship Church, 6100 Georgia Avenue. If you support Lisa and love her, well, maybe not love, I love her like she was my daughter, because I've known Lisa for over 35 years. We work together at DC Superior Court Probation Department. Please make your voice known. Make your presence known, because it's just yesterday that the announcement came out by them.
Trying to keep it quiet.
I'm trying to keep it very quiet.
I bet you $100 she doesn't show up.
Oh, she'll be there.
Oh, she'll be there.
She'll be there.
She'll be there.
Will you send an email to me with the details, and I'll send it to everybody?
Yes, I will. But if you go, I'll send you in the flyer, because you have to register. You have to register. So I will send that to Jen, but please be there. We need your support. Janice needs to know, and I will say her name, Janice needs to know that she's in the fight for her life.
She knows.
I'm sorry, she's in the fight for her life. And that, people are not happy. And we as a people, as voters, our voices are powerful. If you look at other countries where people say enough is enough and you join together. Your issues may be different, but you are in pain. We want our streets back. I want my block back. Well, like I used to 15 years ago. I don't feel safe doing that now.
I would be shocked if he's elected.
And I've been here in this city for close to 50 years. So I've seen the changes, okay? So with all of that, I say, donate, use the site, and come April 16th.
Yes.
You're fine.
Yeah. So hi everyone, before we wrap up, my name is Corinthia. I'm a volunteer on Lisa's campaign. I volunteer for her at-large campaign, and I'm volunteering for her Ward 4 campaign. I'm actually a Ward 3 resident, but I really believe in Lisa. I first met Lisa a part of the 3-4G ANC Commission. She chairs our Racial and Social Equity Committee, and so I got to work with her intimately on that committee. And I just want to let you guys know, one of the things that I most admire about Lisa, so I live in DC, and one of the things I notice about our council members is everything something that happens with the mayor, they're always complaining. They're always saying, why is the budget this? Why isn't the budget that? And I'm thinking, I don't work in the council, but it's like, where were you all in the discussion? One of the things I admire about Lisa, and I'm trying to activate this in my work as a professional, is she works with people regardless of your stance. We could be, I don't know much about turf, I don't mind turf, but I listen to Lisa. She listens to people even if you have differing views, right? She works with you. She's about what can we do for the people. Another thing I admire about her is she works with residents. I call Lisa, hey Lisa, I met this lady, she has this issue, what should I do? I don't know what to do. Lisa tells me what to do, or say you can do this, or give them my number. I thought it was really admirable when she talked about her neighbor who was living in her car, and Lisa was literally helping this person. When I found out she was financially helping this person, I said, well, can I buy them groceries, or can I help them? And so I feel we need council members who are truly for the people. It's different when I can approach you and say, Lisa, I have this issue, what can I do? You may not be able to personally help me, but you can tell me, call this service center, call that service center. This recently happened. I had a neighbor who was being evicted, and she was outside of our building just constantly throughout the night, just having mental issues. And I said, Lisa, what can I do? Because I feel bad for her. It's cold outside, and Lisa helped me. So they mentioned donating to the campaign, coming out on April 16th, and also if you can volunteer with us, helping us put out signs, because I think we need someone in Ward 4, and even on the council outside of that, is truly helping residents, like actually helping us, not thinking that we're above people because we hold a position. I work in public service as well, and you have people that attain a certain level, and they don't want to interact with you because you're not my GS level, or you're not a deputy. No, I have this issue. Can you help me? Can we do this? So I really hope that you guys can help Lisa through this campaign. We're really working hard. We need volunteers, donations, that 5-time match, working on this is my first time working on a grassroots campaign, and I'm like, how do people do this without money? And that 5-to-1 donation is
$500 right here.
That's right.
It's really important, because for everything, like to even send you guys mailers, that costs money. To even send you a text, that costs money. So I just really appreciate you guys for being here, supporting Lisa, and I hope you see me, even though I'm not a Ward 4 resident, I'm still out here with my son. We're always out knocking doors, just trying to spread the word about Lisa. So thank you.
That are going to vote this cycle, probably 18,000. 18,000 those 18,000, approximately 9,000.
What do you need? Lisa? Lisa?
But it's only if we get the message out. We compare really well, but